Hello, welcome everyone. Excited to have you with us today. We are going to give it just a couple minutes as others are joining, but as always, you may know that we start off by having a little conversation here in the chat. So we invite you to share where you're joining us from today, and then just to help us level set a little bit, two questions. The first is, have you used any AI programs previously? So that could be ChatGPT, Bard, Gemini, whatever it's called now. And then what is your comfort level with AI? So on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being not very comfortable and 5 being very comfortable. So where are you joining us from? And then just the two questions, have you used AI programs previously? And what would you say is your comfort level? Just to help us as we start off the conversation today. So myself joining from Washington, D.C., Washington, D.C. area. Love seeing where everyone's coming in from. Millbrook Chamber of Commerce. Excellent. Yeah, seeing a lot of familiar names coming in here too. It's always nice to see repeat attendees. Greenville, South Carolina. Nice. Yeah. Excellent. Well, I hope everyone's having a good day. It's a little bit rainy up here in DC, but that makes it really nice to be inside and not feel guilty being being outside. So
I have no plans to go anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. Illinois Chamber. Use ChatGPT, minimally comfort. Boulevard, I hope I'm saying that right. Spring Branch Chamber of Commerce in Texas. Nice. From Alabama, getting a nice little variety here. So we'll let people continue dropping in the chat where you're joining us from today. And then we'll go ahead and get started. So just to introduce, we'd like to formally welcome you to today's webinar, The Hiring Today Don't Get Bit by the AI Bug. It's a little bit of a mouthful. Just as a reminder, Institute is a CAE and a CCE approved provider. So we do provide, by attending the webinar today in person, you will receive 1 hour of CAE credit and 1 point of CCE credit. We do ask that you email us after the webinar to the IOM inbox, and I'll go ahead and drop that in the chat. And then also webinar materials, so both the PowerPoint and a recording of today's presentation will be available typically about 48 hours after the webinar concludes in our webinars and resource center. And then we do have an upcoming event we just wanted to highlight. So if you know of somebody that's interested in learning more about Institute, or you yourself are a first time or going to a new site, would like to learn more about any of the different sites that we hold, we invite you to join us for a information session on Tuesday, April 23rd at 2 p.m. And I'll go ahead and drop in the chat as well the registration link for where to sign up for that if you're interested in. As we go throughout the webinar today, we'd like to encourage you to ask any questions in the chat as we're going. We'll be answering those throughout, and then also hold a couple minutes at the end for questions as well. And with that said, I'll go ahead and introduce today's speaker. So we have with us Pamela J. Green. Pam is consistently voted one of DC's top 20 coaches, has over 30 years of leadership experience, and is well known and highly recognized among leaders, executives, and their boards. Pam holds several certifications that I'd like to highlight: an internal conflict coach, or ICC, SPHR from the Human Resource Certification Institute, and a professional certified coach from the International Coach Federation. She earned a Bachelor of Science and an MBA from the Franklin University in Columbus, Ohio, and is pursuing a PhD in organizational management. So very well-versed in many fields. So with that said, Pam, I'll go ahead and turn over the time to you.
Thank you, Cece, and thanks all of you for joining. And so let me just kind of start out some with where a lot of you are when it comes to artificial intelligence. I actually, sort of just poo-pooed it and pushed it to the side, like, oh my goodness, another thing. I'm not gonna worry with it. I'm too old for this, blah, blah, blah. But then someone turned me on to Otter, OTTER. I want to say it's now been about 2 years in the middle of the pandemic. And so Otter, what it does is you download it on your phone, and what it does is it transcribes conversation. It transcribes your everything that you're saying. And I think there's a free version and then there's a paid version. I fell so much in love with the thing that I bought the paid version. The thing that intrigued me the most was it was really good, very accurate, because a lot of transcription services are not that accurate. This one was very accurate. I actually could turn it on. My phone screen would go blank and just lay it down and record a webinar or any conversation. But I typically would use it when I was passively listening to like a webinar or something like that. So it dawned on me. I was having a conversation with the person who shared it, and she said, Pam, people are using these things all the time. There are all these different apps. And I said, yeah, it's just a recording device. Upon closer examination, Otter does more than that. Otter will actually, it has extended the life of its brand and will give you summary of the conversation or a summary of what was discussed and whatever it is that's being recorded. And the other thing is you can ask it to take your information and create a plan of action, some goals. It will tease it out for you. So you used to have to go back, read the transcript, create your goals. Now you can go back, ask it a question, and most of the time it'll summarize key points, but you can ask it to create an agenda based on this conversation, right? Makes life much easier. So that's sort of the positive side of artificial intelligence. The not so positive side is that we are creating, I think, a world of very lazy people. And so now I don't necessarily have to really think. I can save some time, but I also may not, I may be able to take some shortcuts. And so what I have found in speaking with a lot of my clients is that people are taking some shortcuts when it comes to the selection and the recruitment process. And I want to talk about how that works. The other thing to keep in mind is with the Otter app, because there are lots of these kinds of apps out there, all they have to do is bring their phone in with them. That you can have it on, put it in your purse, walk into a room, into a meeting, and the conversation is recorded. And in a lot of states, all you need is a one-person consent to record conversations, meaning if it's you and I in a conversation, the consent is mine. I'm giving myself a consent to record this conversation. I never have to tell you. In a two-person consent conversation, in some states, both people have to agree to being recorded. But is that going to really stop people? Probably not. So I wanted you to know that from the onset, that it has already been an integral part of what it is, our daily lives, and we just may not be exposed to it. So whether we like it or not, we need to come up to speed on what artificial intelligence is, how it's being leveraged for the hiring and recruitment process, and then most importantly, how candidates are using it to kind of sort of shortcut, I won't say fool us, but to shortcut their preparation to interview. So it's good to know where you all are in this process. So we're gonna just keep on going with this. Let me see here. So my question, and type it in the chat if you want. You could come off mute if you're able to, and just tell me, what are your primary concerns about artificial intelligence and job candidates specifically? I mean, you could say either or, but I'm curious, what are some of your primary concerns or questions that you might have about it? And again, you can come off mute or you can type it in the chat. I know it may take a little bit of a lag to come off of to type it in. What are your primary concerns? Or maybe even why did you join the call today? Concerns? Are you out there? All right. Yeah, hard to get to know someone without filtering through insincere answers. Yeah, right. Well, part of the issue is, right, knowing, I think one of the challenges I see is people are so good at this that interviewing within an hour is easy. I can fool anybody in an hour, but it's not necessarily ChatGPT or AI is making it more complicated. It makes it very difficult, to your point, Brenda. Yeah. Yeah, missing out on a good candidate because they don't use, they didn't use keyword. Yeah, keywords. Yeah. Yeah. And they may not know. I think some people sincerely use AI because they want to know what the keywords are. They want to know what the buzzwords are. And if they use AI with the systems that I'm going to show you today, those buzzwords rise up. They may not be a part of their normal conversation, but at least it puts them at the forefront of your selection process if you're using an AI instrument to weed through candidates. So it can help people kind of move up, even though they might the language that is selected for their job search isn't language that they might use on a regular basis. Yeah, and not knowing how candidates can use AI, not being aware of what could be versus the original content. I want to learn about the tools so I can watch for their use. Absolutely. I hate to say this, but we're becoming little private investigators when it comes to the selection process, and people are able to fool us, but there's some ways around it. And I really want to talk about that today. So artificial intelligence is being heavily used by organizations, small and large. Cuts down on time with candidate sourcing, resume screening, candidate matching, video analysis, predictive analysis. I mean, it is saving people a lot of time when it comes to sourcing, identifying, selecting people that you want to review. Looks at the data, and if they don't have keywords, unfortunately, they might get overlooked. So I think that's the biggest downside. We've taken sort of the human element out of the selection of who we want to select. The other thing that we found with artificial intelligence and the recruitment process is that minority candidates are often overlooked in the selection of people who are sourced by these tools. So especially when it comes to facial recognition, a lot of them are matching people based on, or saying people are better candidates because they have maybe more European features than non-European features. So those kinds of things are very real. And I always ask organizations to consider, definitely, it saves time, but think about taking a cursory look at the candidates that are in the pool and finding some time to do that. I think that it's a skill, an art, and a talent that's overlooked. Never allow an instrument to handle all of the work, right? There's some things that an instrument, they're just not equipped to do. And so they do make mistakes. So it's being used for all of these things and then some. And then some will say that artificial intelligence and recruiting instruments are used to help select diverse candidates. So we're getting better, but you don't know which ones those are exactly. So there's a lot of work to be done in this space. So that's on the corporate side of things. I want to share with you some tools as well, because when I started looking into artificial intelligence, when I realized I can't poo-poo it and push it to the side any longer, I wanted to see, well, how does this thing work? And because I have a lot of clients, coaching clients, and I don't do job resume review and all of that. I might look at their resume and I look at it, compare it to LinkedIn to make sure they are aligned, but I don't do the work of, okay, you need to do this and do that. So I looked at some of these artificially intelligent tools. And I mean, these things are amazing. You can copy and paste a raggedy job description and a resume, and this thing will make you look like the king of Capitol Hill. I mean, or queen of Capitol Hill, the person of Capitol Hill. So you can take, if I'm a candidate, I can take that job that you posted and generate interview questions to help me prepare for the job. Now, some will say, how is that different from what people used to do? Well, they used to pick up the phone and call, hey, do you know, what do you think? Do informational interviews to find out how they might prepare. They would have practice interviews. So it's not that different. It's way more razor focused, and it kicks out interview questions that are more likely to be used in an interview. How do they know that? Because all this content is available on the internet, albeit not always accurate. So a person who's relying on this may present as very prepared to interview. So it gives us some information, but it's not the only information that we need to pay attention to. I don't want you to let go of your own insights. don't just take cursory answers. I want you to think about that, because sometimes we rush through the interview process and we end up with a candidate that really has been artificially produced, not who the person really needed to be, right? The representative shows up for the interview, and then we get the real person on day one. And there can be sometimes, not always, very different individuals. So some popular tools, and we'll post this so that you all have it. I want to share with you. Some of them are free and some of them will cost anyone that wants to use them, but a lot of the popular tools are free, like ChatGPT. And I'll give you an example of how it's been used in the past. So Maya is a really popular tool to help candidates, because I really want you to think about what's happening from the candidate side so we can be prepared to talk about how do we address this? How do we navigate these kinds of things? These things are amazing. It will help the candidate prepare for conversations, interactions. It'll give them feedback on their responses. So what you're going to get with this candidate that uses the Maya tool, they're going to be ready to walk in the door, especially if you say, for example, your job is, front desk clerk, receptionist, meeting and events planner or manager, outreach coordinator, marketing person. A lot of the traditional titles are titles that are easy for AI to produce content. Now, I'm not saying go out and create crazy titles, but what I am saying, be very specific about what it is you want, and know that AI can produce all of this really, really good stuff. I mean, I've checked this stuff out. When I say it's amazing what it can produce. So you have Maya as a tool. Another popular tool is Interviewing.io. Now this one costs a little bit, but if you want to practice and you want to understand, you want a little more robust experience and make sure that you're really, really, really ready, then some candidates will use Interviewing.io. So this one, again, goes a lot deeper in some of the capabilities and the core competencies and the complexity that is required for some jobs. It'll look at your communication style. It'll examine your problem-solving skills. And again, give the candidate feedback on how they're doing. Part of the challenge that I see with a lot of these instruments is they will come in thinking that they're prepared because they answer your questions, and then you just kind of move on to the next thing. You tell them you don't get the job, and they're like, what the heck? I answered it. This is how you answer this question. But if everybody's using these tools, and a lot of people are, it makes it difficult to determine and distinguish one candidate from another, because some of the answers will be similar. One of the ways you can tell that someone is using a tool is if they're kind of pat answers. It's like the textbook answer for a question. It doesn't exactly speak to their experience. They'll say things like, here's how I would handle this, not how I have handled this. So you'll hear the lingo and the language, and it'll sound oh so good, like a great spaghetti dinner, right? And you just smells so good, it feels so good. Don't get caught up. Don't dive in just yet. There's some things that we need to do to make sure that this candidate has not been AI produced for you. Another popular tool is AI Apply. Now, this one has a free option. Anybody that wants to get in there can start, just kind of let you play around with it. Again, audio enabled. It kind of works like Siri and Google Assistant for interviewing support. Now, what I will say is I'm all for candidates to be prepared. I want the best candidate and I want that person to be prepared, but I want to know they can do the job. So preparation is okay. It's when candidates use these tools to help them work through the interview process. Here's a question, and I'm going to pause on this because I'm curious. How many of you are using like Zoom or Teams to interview candidates? Like, raise show of hands. I don't know if we can do that. Show of hands, or just, yes, I am. We use it a lot. I see a couple of hands. Yeah. 5, 6. Yeah. Don't we love this stuff? We love this stuff. But let me explain some things to you. When you have people on Zoom, on video, wherever it is, I can have my AI in the background. So I'm going to minimize my screen, and I'm actually reading something that's different, right? I'm just looking around, and right, I don't know if you can even see my eyes, but I'm actually have other screens open, and I can have AI operating in the background. So AI hears the question, gives a response, and all I'm doing is responding to you. It's just feeding me what the question needs to be, and then it's giving me feedback on how I'm performing. And you have no idea, because I'm still giving you this space, and I might be leaning in, but actually I might be leaning in because I'm trying to read what AI is saying to me. You understand what I'm saying? So this thing is having Teams, it makes it easier for us, and interviewing by the internet makes it easier. But let me tell you, it also makes it easier for the candidate to give themselves a leg up by using AI in the background, right? So I want you to think about how it's really being leveraged and used. So here's an example. Let me see if I can't. Still got chat open. All right. So here's an example of one. I don't know if you all can see this. It's doing stuff. I mess with it. I'm doing something. I hope y'all can see this, but let me go back. Hold on. See if I can bring myself out of this. Psst. Oops, oops, oops. Is it moving crazy for you all? Because it's moving kind of crazy for me, and I think I did something. It is. All right. I was trying to expand it, and I didn't mean to do that. Stop, stop, stop. Oh my gosh. Oh, for crying out loud. How do you? Okay, it stopped. Thank you. All right. Ooh, okay, Pam, don't do that again. All right. So I'm just trying to make it big so we can see it. So with this, maybe you all can enlarge it on your screen. I wanted you to see how this can work when it comes to, I'm just using something as simple as ChatGPT. Now, I will tell you, I'm a huge fan of AI, only because it makes my life much easier. But when I started playing around with it from a candidate perspective, my mind was blown. So not only can I say, um, interview, let's see, uh, interviewing candidates for, here's a list of questions, basically. Give me questions that I can use to interview with. So it'll give you a list of questions. Oh yeah, I'm interviewing for this job. Here are the list of questions. Then the second question is, how do I answer this question? And so it says, hey, you can answer the question in this way. So that's the second one. So, here's an interview. Give me some questions and tell me how to prepare. So I have the list. That's one. And then how can I answer this? Here's where AI is absolutely brilliant. Now I want you to answer it as if you are, remember, years of experience we put in a job posting, um, uh, background. So you could tell AI, answer it as if you are this person. And then AI gives you this wonderful list of ways that you can answer this question as if they are the person that you're looking for. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So we're on a video call, and I'm giving you this information, and you're telling them, like, oh, well, tell me how you would handle so and so. And they give it to you. You're like, oh my gosh, just killing it on these questions. This is amazing. Uh, there are a couple of red flags on there. What are some of the red flags that you would that would naturally sort of surface? I mean, if they're killing it on all the questions, and you could have a candidate that's doing that, but what are some of the red flags that might surface for you? And you can type it in the chat. Let me see if I can get the chat. Right. Well, no, but you may not even know, Brenda, that they are getting help because they're killing it. I mean, they're like just really, but there may be some red flags that they're getting some help. What are some of the red flags? Because I gotta type it in. I gotta prepare. Like, what are some of the things that you think might be red flags for you? Just type it in there. And it may not, you may not, it may be too soon in the presentation for me to, yeah, too many long, there you go. Too many long pauses. Eyes look like they're reading. And now, not everyone who uses this thing is skilled at using this, but it is there for them to use it. Absolutely. Yep, but people do need time to think about, and so the pauses could be distracting from the conversation, but too many pauses and too many pauses on the right thing. So here's what I want you to keep in mind. If you're trying to hire someone who at least has the experience, you need people to have experience in a certain way, then, and they say they have this experience, it should come just like this, not pausing for every single question. um some stuff should just shoot from the hip. You ask me about conflict and so and so, or ask me about how I've done this. Like, oh my goodness, how many situations can I think of? Let me tell you about a time when I did this, and really speak from their experience versus a rote pat, really well sounding question, right? You want to be aware of that, and the things that you all have listed. So no, you don't want to just discount a person because they take too much time. But if every question they have nothing that is in the deep reservoirs of their experience, now we might have a little bit of a challenge. So this is one way of, and this one is free. I mean, I just pulled this one up and created it. So this one is free. So how do you identify if the real candidate is the person is who they say they are, right? They're using all these wonderful tools. You're probably not likely to move away from Teams interviews. But let's say a person kills it in a Teams or a virtual interview. It could be on the phone or something like that. Now, that's the other way. You can go back to being on the phone and then find a way to get them in person. I mean, you could do a lot of different things around that. And I want you to keep those things in mind, because I think sometimes going back to the old fashioned way of doing things might be the way to do it, just so you can begin screening candidates. Because if I'm on the phone, even, maybe they have me on speaker, so that's possible, but it may not be as clear if they have me on speaker. And if they're using a device, then the phones, I'm telling you, I've done some research on this. I can't have my Otter or my AI open on my phone and be using my phone. I'd have to have the laptop open and be on the phone and have a person, and the person has to be on speaker. So a person that puts you on speaker to interview, you might want to question that. Okay, do you have me on speaker? I just want to know. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just for me to take notes. You, like, I'm thinking to myself, I might not say it. Well, you don't have earbuds that you can put in your ear, and why do I need to be on speaker for an interview? Just though I'm not gonna, I wouldn't ask. I'm just saying that some people might ask this question. So those are some things to think about, but I want to give you a whole list more. The 7 things that you can do to trip up AI generated response are these. The first one is, I need you to be specific in your open-ended questions. None of this, I'm going to give you one, but we do it all just to kind of warm up the candidates. Tell me about yourself. Well, anybody can answer that question, and but you may say something like, tell me about your work at XYZ company, and specifically this time frame. For example, you may say, how did you navigate working at this company during COVID? That's really specific. And AI is probably going to go, what? Say what? Right? So you definitely want to get as specific as possible with your open-ended questions. And open-ended questions are questions that don't end in yes or no. So you definitely want to be able to do that. The next thing is I want you to drill down and ask follow-up questions. And I mean, always, always, always ask follow-up questions. And y'all, I'm going to have to, Cece, 1 second. I think my mom is outside at the door waiting. Don't you just love these kinds of things? Hold on 1 second. She's 80 years old, and I think she's locked herself out. So y'all hold on for just 1 second. I don't know if you can pause it or not, but I do apologize. 1 second.
All set, Pam. Thank you. And thank you all for your participation up to this point. I think I love seeing the comments in the chat and the participation as we're going. So thank you so much. I hope it's bringing some useful tips for as you move forward in the hiring process of how to proceed. So thank you.
And I'm back. So thank you all. Yes, she was locked out. She decided she was going to go somewhere. Anyway, so here we are. So I want you to drill down and always, always, always ask follow-up questions. The worst thing that you can do is just ask a question and move on. A couple of reasons why that's not good. One, you could give a candidate the impression that you're not interested. And I've seen a number of situations where both organizations have, expedited the interview process. Some people feel like they're not treated fairly because you just kind of run through the interview, meaning you really weren't interested in them anyway, so you were checking a box. And so some people have felt that it was an unfair process, and that can come back to bite you. So you really do want to give your top candidates a really good fair shake and show some interest in their candidacy. So always drill down. Tell me now, if you all have questions, please go ahead, type those in the chat box, because I want to make sure that I am addressing any questions or concerns that you may have about how to have this experience and really sort of what to expect. So first we said, be specific and then drill down. Always ask a follow-up question. And again, when the person gives, oh, really? And you could say something as, tell me more about that. Well, what's AI going to do with that? And if you're in AI, you can play with it. Say, oh, they have to think. They have to take a step back. Well, what do you mean, tell you more? Like, tell me more about your experience. So you can drill down, because you're going to go back and forth, right? You're going to drill down and then tell me more. How was that for you? How was it for the folks that you were able to work with? Your pace in an interview will make it difficult for the candidate, especially if you're doing this virtually, because I know we can't move immediately away from virtually. It's useful, it's cost-effective, time-effective, all that stuff. But your pace is definitely going to make it difficult for someone, because now you got to wait for AI to respond. And if they keep pausing, and then they answer, and you ask another question and they pause, that cadence is going to give you some insight. So I hate to say, you kind of sort of have to be not so much a detective, but I do want you to pay attention to the case and the cadence of the pace and the cadence of the experience that people are having or giving you in the interview process. I want you to set the tone for them that this is a conversation. And in a conversation, it's just back and forth. It's like, really? Oh, let me think about it. Okay. And then you go on to the next. Well, it's okay. You could try this, but it's conversational in the interview. If you make it rigid, people will be better prepared to use artificial intelligence to help with the process. So make it rigid, manage the pace and the cadence of the interview. The next one, and this one I love, 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 is use scenario-based questions. Because a scenario, they could, AI could pop it in, but here's the deal with the scenario. Let's say I've got AI operating in the background, and you give me a scenario. Well, AI is going to produce it, but it's going to take it a minute to produce that. And they're delayed. So it'll, again, give you some insight. I would even suggest you leave your, do what you normally do virtually, and you have an in-person conversation with your top 1 to 3 at the most candidates, and you hit them with scenario questions, because the scenario question gets to their actual experience. And it is not AI generated, unless, of course, they walk in and they got something in their ear, which I doubt people will have. But I want you to play the game in the virtual, because anybody can fool anyone in a half hour, however much time we're spending with folks in an interview. But with scenario-based questions and a little extra time, it's not that easy. So use scenario-based questions, and I would suggest you can use them in the interview, use even more of them, virtually, use even more of them when you are in person. And your scenarios should get at real experiences that these folks are going to have when they come in the door. And I mean for everyone that you interview, from the receptionist to the CEO or the executive director, everyone has to answer and engage in conversation. I would say a couple of scenarios. That in-person conversation, it to me should be nothing but scenarios. Well, how would you deal with this? And you're drilling down, because you want to know that this person has the experience and the capability to manage through the stuff. I want you to also look for, and I think we talked about this, someone else put this in the chat, inconsistencies in their answers. So let's say you have the AI generated, and I'm calling that the virtual session, because we really can't know unless you ask and they're honest with the answer. So I say don't ask, because people aren't going to tell the truth. They may not. Nobody wants to say, yeah, I use AI to help with this interview. But what you're going to do is take the first virtual interview set of questions and answers, and your in-person interview, and you're going to look for some inconsistencies. And I would say when you have them, you follow up on that. Wow, it's so funny, because in this first interview, you said this. In the in-person, or right now, you're saying this. So in front of you in that interview process, when you're interviewing a person, uh, in person, you're going to have the notes from the first interview in front of you. And you want to be able to compare their answers. You may even ask the exact same questions to see how close their answers are. And I think we wouldn't have to go through the remaining 3 tips if you would just do those 4 things, right? If you just do these 4 things, you really probably don't need as much of the remaining 3 tips as what I'm going to give you. But just think about that. What are your thoughts and questions? What's coming up for you in this process? And you could type it in the chat, or you can come off mute. And I guess we also have Q&A. Q. Cool. What's coming up for you with this? Because I know I've given you a lot, and not everyone is as familiar with AI, but what's coming up for you? You can type it or come off mute. No one? Nothing? No questions? No comments? No thoughts? Okay. All right. If you do, type it in the chat or unmute yourself and let me know. Or you can raise your hand and we can unmute you. And then I want you to compare human insights and AI generated reports on the candidates. And I want you to use common sense, because some organizations are using AI generated reports for the interview and the selection process. And that's fine.
Really
Yes.
quick, Pam, it looks like there are 2 hands raised.
Oh, okay.
Wayne
I can't see
first.
them. Okay, go ahead.
Wayne, so you are going to just on your end have to unmute. So I have 2 questions. I have Wayne and then Cheryl. Cheryl or Cheryl. Oh, okay. Can't turn off your hand raise. Okay, no worries. I just wanted to make sure that if you had a question, we'd address that. All right, you're all set, Pam.
Okay, sounds good. And thank you, Cece, because I can't see the hands raised, unfortunately. But yeah, you want to compare human insights and AI generated reports. Never, ever, ever, ever just rely on AI. I can't say that enough. It is a shortcut, and you start using it and you fall in love with it, but it is not the best way to select people who are going to work with people. You really need to have that human touch and use common sense. And as much as I hear all the time people say, "Sense ain't common." We have common sense. We know what's happening. We kind of get a good sense, and then follow it. Right? Just make sure that you are following up on those kind of gut questions, those things that help you get a better sense of who the candidate is. I try to get leaders to think in this way. People have education and experience out the wahoo, and that's great. And I want to say you got it on education and experience. What I want to know is I want to know how you're going to show up at work. I want to know how you're going to show up with my clients. And I could borrow this probably from maybe the Chick-fil-A model. Chick-fil-A does not hire based on how well you can run point of service. You can run the business at point of service. I can teach you how to run a machine. That's easy. What's most difficult is for me to teach you customer service, to teach you genuine respect, right? To teach you how to get along with people in difficult situations. So when you're thinking about the interview process, what are the things that you can train for easily? I can teach you how to use these systems and tools because we have that laundry list of you have to have had experience with all these systems. Seriously, most people have some, but not all of them. Okay, so maybe that's a weeding out process. What I really want to know is how well do you interact on the stuff that's difficult for me to train and or develop? Integrity, trust, credibility, communication, people interaction, customer service, and the list goes on and on. Anything that deals with people, you do not want to have to make a huge investment in developing people how to deal with people because it comes with the candidate. Can you do it? Yes, but that's a huge investment, and the person has to want to make that change. And you have to assess how big of a change is it going to be. So think about how you go about the selection process based on what can you train and what can't you train, what's difficult to train, and you base your interview process on closing the gap between the things that you can train and the things that you can't. Make sure if you have questions about that, let me know. But it's as simple as what I put it out there from the Chick-fil-A perspective. Are you hiring for point of sale or are you hiring for customer service or your particular core competency or capability? And then also you'll get to an understanding of people's values in this process. I think a lot of folks left companies and are in this space post-COVID, if we can say that, because their core values changed, not because you weren't doing good work, but they want to do good work within organizations whose core values align with them. Maybe their core values are now family and work-life balance. And in their previous job, they didn't have it. So having those real conversations can help you understand what people want. And they really, we're now selecting companies that are aligned with our core values. You need to have conversation around core values and what their core values are. AI can't generate that. For me, it can give me a sense of them, but it can't tell you what Pam Green's core values are. So you see how important it is to get to know the human that you are interacting with, who's going to deal with other humans in your organization. Okay. 6, I want you to restrict access to web browsers and the internet as much as you can. So create controlled environments so that you can reduce the likelihood of an AI supported interview. Some people, I mean, if you're in person, it doesn't matter to me whether you bring a phone or an entire large recording device. It, it is what it is. We're probably not going to say anything in the interview that you don't mind being recorded for, because most of us have been or are being recorded and we don't even know it most of the time. So I tell people, don't say anything privately or publicly that you don't want on the 6 o'clock news, or now it's the 4 o'clock news, that you don't want to show up in the news, or front lines, or what, headline news or whatever, right? So if we keep that as our own sort of way of thinking about how we interact with people, it doesn't matter whether they record. What does matter is how they're using AI to advance their brand, and their candidacy for a job. So some organizations say, I want you to write me a report. Write a report. Let me see your writing skills. You don't get that to somebody who's sitting at home. And you bring them in, you put them in a room, you take their stuff, and lock it up, and you get them in a room and, hey, type this out. I hate to say that that's kind of where we are, but unfortunately, that's where we are for top candidates, in our organization. Every level of candidacy, every single level of candidacy. It is not just, we want to say, oh, the young people are using this. I got to tell you, they're not. They're not. Everyone is taking advantage of artificial intelligence. And I mean everyone, meaning every level, not every person, and is taking advantage of it. But there are some really smart cookies out there who are taking advantage of it. And then the last one is, spending time with the candidate beats anything and everything that you can possibly do. You get to know who they are. You can follow up on questions. You can follow up on their experience. You can really drill down into who the person is and how they're showing up, and whether or not you like them, whether you want them to be a part of the organization. I had someone, I have to vet clients, my clients have to vet me. And I remember being on a call with a potential client, and we were just talking and stuff, and he said, Pam, you're just the kind of person I just want to work with. I would just want to work with you. And I wasn't using artificial intelligence. I was just having a good old-fashioned conversation. But imagine, you can't, because I'm so guarded and I'm so worried about having the right answer for the right question, and I'm searching for things. Then you can tell people who are just authentically being themselves and showing up, and those who are really guarded and buttoned down and are giving you all of the right answers or telling you what it is you want to hear. If you are so desperate to hear just what you want to hear so you can check a box and put someone in, none of this is going to work for you. But if you really want the right candidate, it's a good fit for you, regardless of how difficult it is to find the right candidate, then I'm going to say, take into consideration that some people are leveraging artificial intelligence. And I've just given you 7 tips to figure out a way to navigate that. So what questions do you have? I think we have roughly about 10 minutes. What questions, thoughts, comments, feedback, pushback, insights? I'd love to hear your experiences, but I'm open for questions, and really appreciate you all joining the call. And Cece, if you all want to jump back in, you certainly can. But I don't know if you had any announcements or anything that you wanted to share. But I'm open for questions. You all know how to reach me, how to contact me if you do have additional follow-up questions. But I tried not to overwhelm you with a whole lot. The first part of the deck, when you all get it, is these are tools that candidates are using. Not all of them, but there are some tools that candidates are using. And then the last part were just some tips so that you can navigate and make sure you're finding a candidate that's going to be a good fit for you. Brenda, you're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I just want to give the opportunity for any questions. So if there are, please feel free to drop that in the chat, or raise your hand, and then we can unmute you. Oh yes, some comments here in the chat.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And then just as a reminder for those that did join a little bit later, Institute is a CAE and a CCE approved provider. So attending this webinar today does qualify for 1 hour of CAE credit and 1 point of CCE credit. And you can email us in the chat there. It's pinned at the very top to the IOM inbox. And then also the webinar will be available, both a recording and then, as Pam mentioned, the PowerPoint materials. And then we do just want to highlight that we have an information session coming up in a couple weeks. So on April 23rd at 2:00 p.m., if you're interested or know somebody that's interested to learn more about Institute, we invite you to attend. And we have a question here. Does this apply to first years who won't be attending Institute this summer? So as far as the credit, if that's what you're referencing, yes. So that's if you are if you are pursuing your CAE or CCE credentials, then yes, it does qualify. As far as the information session, that's open for anybody. So whether you're a first year or looking to join in the future, we invite you to come. We'll be highlighting the different Institute sites. So I'll drop that here in the chat. So Miranda, let me know if you had a question on that and I can clarify. But I do want to just hold a couple minutes as well for any final questions. But I do reiterate as well that Pam is a great resource. So if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to her with her information contact here on screen. Yeah, it doesn't sound like we have many questions.
Okay.
So
Cool. Yeah.
we thank you all for joining us, and thank you, Pam, and thank you all for joining us today.
Great. Fantastic. Thank you all for joining.
Yes. All right. Take care. See you.
All right. Bye.